Boom. All right, what's going on, you guys? It's Royce Jacob, and welcome to episode 3 of Waves Weekly. This is a weekly video series I do where I kind of recap the current events and recent news that's occurred over the past week that I feel relates to the markets, and I upload it every Sunday. And I also give you some of my thoughts going into next week and kind of what I'm doing with my portfolio. All right, so let's go over the topics first, and then we'll dive into each one individually. All right, so this is again from the past week, and this past week was April 5th to April 12th of 2020. It is April 11th as of recording this. Okay, so the first topic, we'll start off with some good news because we all know we need it, is the $1,200 stimulus checks are supposed to be starting to roll out next week. Okay, so that's good. The second is crazy levels of unemployment. The third is a manipulated, stupid stock market, in my opinion. The fourth is the reason that the stock market is stupid and manipulated is because the Fed is buying trash, so we'll get into that a little bit. The fifth is Q2 bank earnings that are coming out next week that I feel like are very relevant to market performance next week. The sixth is U.S. record death toll. I'm sure you guys have seen that, but I kind of just I don't want to go over that too much. I just want to go over that in terms of the Moderna calls that I have and how I feel like it'll affect those. And then we'll end on some good old Bitcoin news and kind of some positive long-term price action. So we'll start and end on what I feel is positive news. Okay, so let's get into this first topic. All right, I'll close that out. Get into this stimulus check. So IRS says stimulus payments will begin next week. Okay, so let's just read a little bit of this. The Internal Revenue Service said Friday that some stimulus payments will start going out next week, starting with people who have filed tax returns for 2018 or 2019 and authorized direct deposits. Okay, so if you guys are good tax-paying American citizens and you linked a bank account to with the IRS, so they when they gave you your tax return or took out taxes, they did it via direct deposit. You should be in that first batch of people getting that $1,200 stimulus check. Okay, so that's super simple. But again, just kick it off with some good news. I'm stoked because I did file my 2019 taxes, and I do have my my direct deposit information linked to the IRS. So I'll give you guys some update next weekend on if that actually if that actually went through or if it fell through. All right, so again, good news right off the bat. That's good. Okay, and then into some not so good news. This is also popular news. I'm not surprised if you guys saw this, but sudden black hole for the economy with millions more unemployed. Jobless claims now exceed 16 million as shutdowns from coronavirus pandemic widen and problems with getting benefits persist. Okay, so again, like the entire economy is at a complete standstill right now. It is so not surprising at all to see the numbers of unemployment continually rising. So again, it's sad news, but it's really not that surprising. So I just want to read this little this small passage from this, and then we'll move on to the next thing. So, many economists say the actual job losses so far are almost certainly greater, and there is wide agreement that they will continue to mount. It's as if the economy as a whole has fallen into some sudden black hole. Okay, so you know what loves black holes? The stock market, because it was on fucking fire last week. Okay, so this is titled, "Here's Why the Stock Market Just Had Its Best Week Since 1974. I'm not going to get into the article, but the stock market last week had its best single week since 1974. On the news of record unemployment, terrible fundamentals, the stock market is just on fire. So, it's just ridiculous. I don't know if you guys saw the video I posted earlier this week talking about or kind of rationalizing why I think the stock market has a further way down to go. I'm sure a lot of you are thinking it, but again, I just went into my personal analysis of why I believe that is. And it's just so ridiculous in my mind that the stock market performed so well last week on such terrible economic fundamentals. But the reason it did well is what we'll get into right now, which is the Fed Reserve unveils details of $2.3 trillion stimulus and programs to help support the economy. The Fed plan would inject another $2.3 trillion into businesses and revenue-pinched governments. Stock futures jumped after the Fed's announcement. Moments earlier, the government reported that job losses. This is the primary reason the markets jumped. This is kind of getting into what I feel is a manipulated stock market. The reason I feel that the stock market is currently manipulated, which I feel it definitely has some weight to it, is because the Fed is just buying pretty much everything and everything. So it goes into talking about how the Fed is buying I'll read this. The central bank also provided more detail on its market interventions, including plans to buy corporate bonds, both at an investment grade level as well as high yield or junk bonds. Okay, so junk bonds, if you guys watch The Big Short, you guys know that those are very low rated bonds or trash. So I would call those trash bonds, okay? So the Fed is buying anything and everything to try to stimulate the economy. I think they're really on their, they're pulling out every weapon in their arsenal to try to attack this. And again, that's good, but I don't think it has any longevity. I think this will not last long successfully. But that's what they're doing. So the reason I think the market's manipulated, which again I think it is because the Fed is giving so much money to all these hedge funds and in whales, these market movers, through these stimulus packages, and telling them to buy up as many freaking equities as they can to prop up the market. And those large players propping up the market gives these retail investors, poor old retail Joe out here, the sense that the market is going to bounce back into this V-shaped recovery, which I definitely don't think it is. It could, I don't know, but all the fundamentals are pointing at the fact that it will not. So that is my opinion, and that's kind of all I want to talk about there. I talked about, again, this more in depth in my previous video, so you guys can check that out if you want, but the market is just so irritating right now. Okay, so this is a big, when it comes to next week and how the market will perform next week, I think this is probably the biggest factor in the market performance. So it's the banks are releasing their quarter 2 earnings next week. So this article is titled 5 Things Wall Street Will Be Looking For When Banks Report Earnings Next Week. Let's exit this ad. Get ready for bank earnings. The nation's biggest banks will report their first quarter results next week, and Wall Street is anxious to hear how the banks are faring amid the coronavirus pandemic. JP Morgan Chase kicks off bank earnings on Tuesday alongside Wells Fargo. Bank of America, Citigroup, Goldman, and Morgan Stanley will share results later in the week. Okay, so there's a lot of weight, obviously, that is going to be put on these bank earnings. Interest rates are cut to zero, as you guys know, and that is awful for the banks. That's how the banks generate a lot of their revenue and profits. So, and they're also involved in taking all this money from the Fed and distributing it among the people through these stimulus packages. So there's a lot of just shit going on with the banks right now. So I'm very curious as to how these banks do actually report earnings and guidance. So again, I'm just going to kind of briefly go over these. I just want to let you guys know that this is definitely something to look out for. So keep an eye out for, JP Morgan Chase and Wells Fargo are announcing on Tuesday. So they're going to kick things off, and that will definitely set some trend. I don't know if it's going to be up or down. Again, we'll see. But that's on Tuesday, so keep an eye out for that, okay? All right. Moving on to sad, very sad. U.S. now has the highest COVID-19 death toll worldwide, surpassing Italy. This is probably the biggest news in the U.S. right now, so I'm sure you guys are familiar. Again, bummer, but not surprising, just because we were late to the game. All these numbers, I personally don't like any of these numbers. I've mentioned this before, that the numbers are the deaths not necessarily, but a lot of the numbers kind of involved with this virus are a lagging indicator, so they just don't realistically reflect the reality of what's going on with this virus. Okay, so again, I don't want to just sit on this. This sucks. This is very sad, but this kind of plays into what I'm sure you guys know if you guys have been tuned in, my Moderna calls. So Moderna, I'm still holding strong on my call positions. It was a rough week this past week, again, because Moderna is kind of acting as a hedge to the market in a weird sense. So if the market goes up, if consumer sentiment is artificially good, then Moderna seems to fall down because it's acting as a hedge to the markets. So if the general market is moving up, then Moderna seems to either go sideways or fall. And again, it wasn't a terrible week. It did, from a technical perspective, break this very strong uptrend it was having. But there is still this lower trend line that's important, and it's still on the 4-hour chart and the daily chart. This is the 4-hour, but the daily as well. So on both the 4-hour and daily chart, it is still above the 21 exponential moving average, which I feel is the most significant, simple but significant technical indicator in my mind. So it's using that 21 EMA as a good line of support, and I feel like, especially with this negative COVID news that occurred just today, or yesterday, I should say. It should do well. Again, fundamentals sadly don't mean much in this market just because it's so irrational and there's so much just bullshit going on. But I'm hopeful, obviously, because my money's on it. But I do believe this company is doing a great thing and a great service to humanity. So I do hope it succeeds, and it'll also just kind of, again, make the entire market bounce back quicker. Although, again, the fundamentals of the general market are still super weak. Like, the economy's in a bad place, if I haven't alliterated that enough. But, again, yeah, I just wanted to say, just cover this and why it relates to my Moderna calls. Again, I'm holding these guys until Moderna pops. I think it's going to hit 50 eventually, probably more, especially upon news of them reaching either phase 2 clinical trials or releasing any good news on a potential vaccine. Okay, so I'm holding strong on Moderna, and I'm holding strong on Bitcoin. As you guys know, I feel like all of the fundamentals and just the crazy shit going on with, like, again, I don't want to get anarchistic, but there is definitely a distrust and an uneasiness that everyone can feel towards our government, and people are realizing that money is really just becoming a number. It's just fun money at this point, right? They're just handing money out. They're just printing as much as they possibly can, and over time, not now. Again, I have made videos about this. If you guys have watched them, if not, go check out some of my Bitcoin videos talking about how Bitcoin is the ultimate deflationary asset as opposed to the US dollar. As they're printing trillions and trillions, over time, the dollar is going to use value. It's not going to be in the next month. It's going to take a little bit of time. I would say within the next 6 months, for sure, is when people are going to realize that all this money printing is devaluing their dollar and their hard-earned money. And it will lead them to hard assets like Bitcoin. It's absolutely scarce. It has a finite value, finite amount, and people are going to want to store their money in something that will protect their wealth and the value that they've worked so hard for. Okay, so this is just a chart. It's made by Bitfink. I've referenced this guy before. He makes great charts in my opinion. Great fundamental, which is so important. Not to everyone else, obviously, but I hope to, definitely to myself, and I hope for you guys, the fundamentals are stronger than the technicals. But again, technicals are solid here. Fundamentals, I can't get the message across that the fundamentals are so strong for Bitcoin right now. But this is just showing price since the high in 2017 at 20K, and kind of just this arc, this nice clean arc that's coming down, as well as this potential W pattern that plays into these arcs a lot. Okay, so we're right here right now. Bitcoin is, again, the day-to-day price action. You can't worry too much about it just because the markets are so irrational right now. But again, with all the fundamentals in line, the devaluation of the dollar, this has Bitcoin steady up and down, up along this arc. And it's predicting that Bitcoin will hit around 50K at this time next year. Okay, so April 5th of 2021, this price prediction, again, this is just a prediction. It could be completely different to this, but I think it's a good looking chart. And he uses fractals a lot, so it's just patterns repeating themselves. Okay, and again, back to charts. It's general market psychology over long periods of times. Okay, so it's market psychology. And again, this arch is strong. There's two arches kind of intersecting with each other, and with all the fundamentals in place, solid technicals, I would personally definitely not be surprised to see Bitcoin hit $50,000. If a year from today, if Bitcoin is at 50K, I'd feel like shit. This was everyone should have seen this coming. Okay, so again, just my opinion. Always keep that in mind. Could for sure not happen, but I'm confident that it will hit at least 50K at this time next year. Okay, so again, end on some solid news there. As always, drop a comment down below if you want to ask any questions or just literally talk about anything. I would appreciate it if you liked this video and subscribe if you want to catch more of this content. I'm doing my best to push out at least 2 videos every week. So again, yeah, subscribe if you want to catch more. Check out the links in the description for the bullish merch, and I have an options trading course if you guys are interested in that at all. Always watch all the free videos. I have a free video on it too, so watch as much as you can prior to buying any course ever. So I do have that available. I have some affiliate links to cool little Amazon shit like books and some of my favorite books and whatnot. It's just a good little way to support the channel if you appreciate the work I'm doing, and it's like a win-win situation because you get something out of it too. So again, I really appreciate you guys watching. Always remember, you guys make waves in these markets. Until next time, peace. Whoop. There we go.